You know, look, it's heavy times in the United States. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Things are pretty tough. Um, I just want to say for anyone who, I mean, I understand that we have our disagreements, but for anyone who would, mock or insult or make jokes about or disagree with, you can disagree with people, right? You can have problems with something. You can say I don't want to engage with this content. You can say it doesn't fit my worldview. But any of you that would mock that the Snyderverse is not coming back, any of you that would any of you that would make jokes that Zack Snyder's Justice League is not going to get a sequel, sincerely and honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I don't know if we can find common ground. I mean, I understand if you don't want to watch the movie, but for some of us, that was really important. That the worst superhero movies that you have to squint to see were coming out every year, and you can disagree ideologically, but at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that killing those movies is killing civility in this country. And to make jokes about that, and to be like, oh, I prefer the James Gunn movies. You can prefer that, but the idea that there's not going to be the Snyderverse anymore, I'm gonna be real. It pains me. It pains me, and I think it should pain each and every American. And we may just need a national divorce. I don't know what to say.
You know what? Listen, like I have soured so much on the word debate, specifically the concept of debate as it is conceived of in this country, where it's two people with diametrically opposed views, like yelling at each other. Like, you can have a debate between two forces with the same end goal in mind, but like different ways of getting there. That's one thing. But like, Gunn versus Snyder, yeah, I'm sorry. National divorce, cultural revolution, in the end, there can only be one. Truly.
In the end, there can only be Gunn, at least for some people.
Listen, like I'll forgive Snyder everything if he does a 5-movie reboot all about Doctor Poison.
I will give Zack Zack Snyder. You would have been successful if you leaned more into the 9/11 shit. You messed up by not having every single scene in those movies be superheroes committing war crimes. That's your failing.
I hear they call it Wonder Woman because you wonder why she's not on the front lines in Gaza.
You're now listening to Socialist Shelf Radio.
Yeah, no, today is going to be a little loosey goosey. We had some technical issues, but we're back at it. We're dropping that hot content, that hot sexy content, that article brain part 2. It's just going to keep being parts. I'm really mad because there were multiple things I wanted to pull from. There is, as of this morning, an Ezra Klein, Ben Shapiro joint piece in the New York Times that I was like, boom, I gotta drop it. But then I read it, and it's just Ben talking about his dog shit book the whole time called Lions and Scavengers, about how in society we have hunters and then we have people who want to become scavengers. And he says it's a more useful concept than left and right is the type of people who build and hunt and create, which I don't think he understands what lions
Aren't
are.
the male lions the scavengers? Don't the women do the hunting?
The thing is, I don't know what Ben knows or doesn't know, but Ben seems to think that like Lion King is real life, and he's like, we've got hyenas and lions IRL, and it's not about right and left; it's about lion or hyena. And like, I sincerely think he doesn't like. I don't really know what to make of that. I mean, it's fascist, but in a really stupid way. like on a really like the concept of like the soy right is so real. Like the concept of like the right wing has now become like just as like pop culturalified as like the worst. Like I'm a Gryffindor
Listen,
liberal.
I don't even care if I get canceled for this take. I think we should lead an incursion of lion warriors into the Shadowlands and clean it up once and for all. Because once you see lands that are covered in shadow where you can't go, suddenly there goes the neighborhood. There goes the entire savannah.
And then it's like Ezra Klein moderately pushing back on him. It's Ezra is literally going like in the article. He's being like, I don't know. You're saying the left doesn't believe in anything. They're just post whatever. And Trump and he's like, well, Trump also doesn't believe anything. Trump is
I mean, if Ezra is the left,
yeah, true. And then and Ben is saying Trump is post ideological. Trumpism is a post ideological. There is no more left and right. There is no more belief. There is only reaction in politics, and that the left, the right, and everything is only reacting to other things. Which is why we need a new framework beyond right and left.
because no ideology has ever been crafted in response to previous currents of thought.
Yes, but Ben basically, despite having written a book called The Right, with right capitalized, side of history, now that wants to drop that distinction. And so that was fucking annoying, and it also gets into them debating whether Bernie Sanders really believes in universal health care or not, or if he's just doing it to own Trumpers. It's a really weird debate, and it doesn't matter. But it's not a good article to read. But we do have good articles to read, good content to cure you of article brain. So the question is, Lenore, which one of us is going first?
Let's take it away with you.
Okay. So we've got some good shit today. We are close to home.
And this is an article that's so good. We actually both picked this article.
We did.
At first.
This is an article that's close to home and fairly recent. Fairly recent article, just a few days ago, from the Atlanta Journal Constitution, from our own Atlanta's own flagship newspaper, from the great Bill Torpy. And it comes as we have, mass protests and disruptions around the Center for Disease Control, which is headquartered in Atlanta, with mass firings, with, of course, RFK Jr.'s fucking insane coup, with them cracking down on vaccine access. Y'all know how it's going. It's very bad. So it's very much framed up in that. Even the headline picture here has, save the CDC, people talking, workers rallying outside with scientific leaders. And it is captioned, it's titled, Progressives Messaging Hurts Cause Even as Trump Runs Amok.
Oh, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's see. A high-ranking doctor at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention dropped some needed truth bombs at the MAGA administration last week while resigning in disgust. In recent months, the CDC has been gutted, denigrated, and even fired on. Yes, literally. Finally, Dr. Dmitry C. Daskalaskis, so director of the CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, who is one of 4 leaders who resigned in protest, saying enough is enough. He says, I'm unable to serve in an environment that treats CDC as a tool to generate policies and materials that do not reflect scientific reality and are designed to hurt rather than to improve the public's health, Daskalaskis wrote in a scorching goodbye letter. And the new COVID vaccine initiative puts people of dubious intent and more dubious scientific rigor in charge of recommending vaccine policy to a director hamstrung and sidelined by an authoritarian leader. So far, so good.
Yeah. This sounds.
Yeah. It was a 1,200 word salvo against an administration hell-bent on havoc, quackery, and meanness.
I can't wait to hear how we fight the administration hell-bent on havoc, quackery, and meanness.
But there is one term mentioned twice by Daskalaskis the MAGA defenders ran with, and many people will remember. Pregnant people.
What fucking year is it?
Because Daskalaskis, of course, made the horrifying error, of in his 1,200 word resignation of him throwing away his career, presumably a very high paying job, things that he's worked for his entire life, out of a political protest. But because he, of course, had such an error as to use a more inclusive term for pregnant people, that's what we're going to need to focus for the rest of the article on.
I'm surprised that Torpy even like acknowledges, because like it's not as turfs as like bad faith like jackasses would have you believe, like it's not about like erasing woman as a concept, right? The next sentence here: the term is a newish phrase to include women along with others who have transitioned to being men but still are able to give birth. And I'm surprised Torpy even mentions the whole transmask angle, which is like more pertinent to the term coming into use, because most people don't even bother.
Yep.
Not that I'm writing him any checks here.
Sure. Yeah, no, he's writing us a check actually for promoting his work right here. We're making him look good. And also, I just want to say before you go on, like whatever your mileage on, like, you know, I can say more, but on like progressive terminology may like vary. But like, let's just get into like the fact that they're like trying to like be like this is what really matters. So like let's hear some more of this because I'm sure he's going to have some good analysis.
Hmm.
Hammering this issue home last year helped a very flawed and awful person regain the White House. A very flawed. Uh, it turns out many in American public do not reside with Daskalakis and his learned brethren insistering on this subject.
Come on.
Um, it then
Also, like
shows up.
literally again, like this has been on my mind lately, since reading Propaganda, talking with Alec Karkatsanis about who gets to get away with like vague language and whatnot. Who is many in the American public, and how are these people being engaged with? Are they even worth engaging with? Is there any counter messaging?
It's super sick, and I want to hope that there's like somebody with good politics at the AJC who did this. It immediately shows an image of the CDC with bullet holes shot up in it from like a Trumper a few weeks ago who like freaking out about like vaccines and shit, like shot a cop and then machine gunned the CDC before like doing suicide by cop.
Hmm.
It's crazy cutting from that to the CDC riddled with bullet holes because someone actually brought a gun and started shooting it, like a real problem.
Well, and again, like he links earlier in the article to something else that he wrote about the CDC shooting, of course. Like, there is the context if you follow that link to the what the guy was like, all worked up about. Um but like to have the CDC like to have the bullet holes like here shown right after this guy's like little tiff about pregnant people, like that juxtaposition makes that terminology much more inflammatory.
It just feels like nothing though.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels like here's the actual political violence
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
the corruption of our institutions. But you, because you feel like your job as a journalist is to present some vague concept of both sides, that you have to go into a guy's letter and find a term that you didn't like that he used. But I
Right.
digress. Let me keep reading.
Hmm.
For years, those on the left, and he's capitalizing left, by the way, and some of their Democratic Party counterparts have invented and embraced a world of terms, jargon, and speech meant to designate social awareness, push back against perceived injustices, and just seem sensitive. The term politically correct gained momentum in the 1980s, but then suffered a backlash. Similarly, being woke indicated one had awakened to society's prejudices and inherent unfairness. So a realm of terms was invented to show one's embrace of the Enlightenment. But like politically correct, woke became a pejorative. Phrases like men can have babies and Latinx, which removes any gender affiliation, Latina, Latino, are seen as irritating, preachy, and smug. Virtue signaling.
And like again, he's bringing these up in the right after he's talked about something with actual like clinical like background and debate and like discussion, like pregnant people, right? He's bringing those up in the context of, well, that's the thing. Like there is no context. There's no context for how these terms have developed, how they're used, how they're messaged about. Like, and like if he really wants to get into the whole like Latinx thing, the least he could do is mention that, hey, there's like Latine, right? There's other schools of thought that are currently being engaged with. And instead, he's reducing it to, some people in an ivory tower somewhere making up words.
Well, the good news is he links here to article he wrote a couple weeks ago that's called "Stone Mountain is Going Woke." Rebel sons complain. So that shows how legitimate those complaints are.
He's not talking about the Sons of Confederate Veterans.
I don't know. That seems like another rabbit hole for another time. But let me
Oh
continue.
my God.
Comedian slash podcaster Mark Maron, himself a dutiful lefty, dropped a
Bullshit.
truth dropped a truth bomb of his own in a new HBO special, speaking about how his own tribe is pushing itself into irrelevance. Progressives have really got to figure out how to deal with this buzzkill problem. You do realize we annoyed the average American into fascism? It was a joke, sort of.
Again, like this is, I mean, he's doing the comic, right? The guy gets bullied and then gets a, like, buzz cut and a swastika tattoo. Like, if he's trying to say that the average American can be annoyed into perpetuating like white supremacy and bigotry and like whatever, like, that doesn't speak well of the average American. He's not making the argument that he thinks he is making.
And I'm going to be real. I don't know much about Mark Maron or his politics. I don't know if you have anything on that. Do you know this Maron guy?
Barely.
Okay, so like who knows? And I don't know the context of this. He may have just been riffing. I don't fucking know. Like it's a comedy special. Pulling a quote like that seems unfair and weird. But we annoyed the average American into fascism is such a frustrating concept. And I will be real. Like we've mocked endlessly how fucking annoying liberals can be. And that includes like the progressive woke skulled liberal, which is a real type of guy. But it is just so interesting when you compare it to something so monumental as the gutting of all public health service in this country, and also for a lot of the world, because we've made a lot of the world subject to the US empire. And it's like the way that USAID, obviously it's absolutely fucked up the way USAID is used on foreign countries as like a form of
Hmm.
soft power and CIA and type shit. But also we also have a responsibility to, as we dismantle those structures, not completely just gut the health services of countries that we've made dependent on us for like vaccine distribution and things like that, which they also intend to do. So it's not just the United States, it's a large section of the world that relies upon the United States, and that they're taking this shit apart. And like it's just so much more important. But I digress. For years, Americans have been shifting rightward. There's just something about progressive politics and the Democratic Party they don't like. A couple weeks ago, the New York Times, citing analysis by L2, a nonpartisan data firm, wrote Democrats are hemorrhaging voters. Of the 30 states, he's quoting, of the 30 states that track voter registration by political party, Democrats lost ground to Republicans in every single one between the 2020 and 2024 elections, and often by a lot, the story said. During that time, Democrats lost some 2.1 million registered voters, and Republicans gained 2.4 million. Voters.
This is not going to be the like glazing Kamala Harris hour, but like worth noting, like she outperformed Biden in this state and many others.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I'm of the opinion, of course, that like Biden would have lost by more than Kamala, but like the idea that like there's like whatever. Voters in the other 20 states, including Georgia, do not register with a political party and were not counted, so it probably is worse for Dems. Okay, we're just going to assume that. Democrats have inherently believed registering new voters helps their cause.
False, false, false. The last time that restoring the franchise to people with felony convictions came up in Congress, a majority of Democrats voted it down. If
Mhm.
you believe in any way that bringing in new voters and that like driving the franchise will help your cause, you engage with that.
Yeah, no. In fact, like I wish the Democrats had a little more spine and wanted to like help their cause more by enfranchising more people. It probably would if they were the party that enfranchised people. If felons got to look and say, "Hey, look, the Democrats just gave us the vote." Hell yeah, they'd probably vote for the Democrats. If the Republicans are smart enough to do the alternative, it'd probably go the same way. Neither of them seem to be interested in doing it because they have deeper issues than just winning elections, because they have deeper ideological and material commitments. We know this if we're paying attention. Same with shit like Puerto Rico. Like the Democrats would get probably 2 new Senate votes out of Puerto Rico. They get 2 new Senate votes for sure out of Washington, D.C. These things, but they don't do it, not because it wouldn't benefit them. I mean, it's just it's wrong on its face, because they're not making these adjustments on purpose, because they're committed to a project, even though actually it's hurting their party's like power. Because newsflash, they don't give a shit about their party's power. At least not a lot of them. Not compared to their commitment to the project. And please note, Republicans don't feel the same way. They are more interested in their party's power than they are the American project. And there's a reason why the Democrats are getting their ass kicked, despite the country being well to the left of the Republican Party on most social issues. Anyway, no longer. Trump even made inroads with black men and Latinx, voters in 2024. There must be a reason.
Fuck off.
Pundits argue Republicans perform better with voters on issues like economics, immigration, and crime. But there's another theory about why voters turn their back on Dems, the annoyance factor posited by comedian Marin. Recently, a center-left think tank called Third Way is not center-left. God.
Again, these people, the Bill Torpies of the world, have the luxury of not having to define their terms.
No. Just to be clear, Third Way is like some like Bill Clinton shit. Like, yeah, the center left, my asshole. Third Way picked up on that theory and compiled a list of terms Democratic candidates and officials should avoid, like a Kid Rock concert. This guy gets paid good money to write this, by the way. Cannot.
Is Kid Rock still living?
Yeah, probably, maybe. I don't know. Hulk Hogan died, not Kid Rock.
I get him confused.
You know, we were playing that music all summer long, brother. In a widely circulated memo entitled, "Was It Something I Said?" the group notes, for a party that spends billions of dollars trying to find the perfect language to connect with voters, Democrats and their allies use an awful lot of words and phrases no ordinary person would ever dream of saying. It's an effort to sound empathetic to certain constituencies, but the effect of this language is to sound like the extreme divisive elitist and obfuscatory enforcers of wokeness, the memo states. To please the few, we have alienated the many, especially on culture issues, where our language sounds superior, haughty, and arrogant. Ouch. And I just have to say, was Joe Biden going out there and being like, listen, folks, with an X, you and your birthday person, like Joe Biden was the oldest, whitest man to ever live. Their last guy was not. The person after that was a cop. Like, these people did not act like this. Like, the idea that the average Democratic politician is behaving like a stereotype of a blue-haired like gender studies professor is not right. And by the way, the blue-haired gender studies professor, on average, at least the ones I've known, would have like gotten universal health care and would be more popular than these people. So actually, I think I would make the case that the average American, even if you agree that they might be annoyed by some of this terminology, but we've all also met somebody that's like annoying about terminology, whatever. But if that person could be in power and you had to listen to some annoying terminology and then you didn't have to worry about your fucking doctor bill, you'd be fine with it. Just on the other way, honestly, I'm just being real with you. If like the president in power made mistakes on terminology and like was too coarse with things and like put their foot in their mouth often, but they paid my doctor bill, I'd also be fine. Like, people care about their material conditions. People turned on Trump in 2020. Why? Because their material conditions were bad and they voted in Biden. Their material conditions were bad in 2024 and they voted in Trump. That's what fucking happened. Say like that this is not that complicated. You're reaching for this. Why did Trump make inroads with the like Black and Latino community? First of all, like not significant inroads if you look at the math. Not particularly.
Yeah, again, like this is a comfortable white person trying to blame minorities for the white supremacy problem in this country.
And I also just note, like, I don't know. I've done hella like community outreach here in Atlanta, Torpy's own city. I don't know if he does that. But like if you talk to people, people who are down and out disproportionately, I've talked to plenty of people just on the MARTA on our train system that are just like, yeah, I voted for Joe Biden because of police brutality in 2020 because he promised he would address the problems and it's only gotten worse. So these people didn't tend to say they were voting for Trump. They tended to say, I'm just not voting this time. Or maybe they do vote. Or they're like, maybe a lot of times I heard, maybe I'll get around to it, but I ain't excited about it. That's what I heard a lot of times. And if you look at the math, the Democrats, he tries to make it seem like there was this like block that switched Biden to Trump. And there are plenty of people like that. There are also plenty of people who got like just deactivated And it had a whole lot more to do with the Democrats like losing ground than Trump gaining ground. That's the actual math if you look at it.
But like you can't talk about that in a room full of consultants, right?
Hmm. They list 40 some terms and phrases guaranteed to nudge independent voters rightward. Birthing persons was the first of such tortured terms mentioned. Others were cisgender, incarcerated people, privilege, triggering, patriarchy, Latinx, and intersectionality. Terms that can draw eye rolls or blank stares. Yeah. Yeah, Joe Biden was up there going, I know I'm a cisgender patriarch. Like, no, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, they don't talk like this.
Well, and again, like terms can draw eye rolls or blank stares. Okay, but what then? Right? This is somebody who doesn't want an ounce of pushback on the theoretical what whatever I don't know. Like whatever program, Torpy wants to advance, like he's willing to drop it at the first sign of resistance or skepticism.
Well, it's only got 2 sentences left. Sure, Trump's lies, power grabs, reckless policies, and clown car cabinet are worse than cringeworthy terms. But words matter, and moral superiority these days can mean being on the outside looking in.
Oh my god. And can we talk a little bit about the article that he links to in that last sentence?
Go for it.
The article that he links to, moral superiority that these days can mean being on the outside looking in. What he links to there is an article that he wrote from March. Trans prisoner bill brings out Dem circular firing squad.
Lord.
And yes, yeah, and this was about the bill that was passed restricting trans health care from incarcerated people in the state of Georgia. And I just want to throw this out there. Like Torpy is one of those people who thinks that trans healthcare is a luxury, right? Something that is nice to have, but ultimately you can do without. There's no like psychological like elements to being in one body or another. Um, there's no like he doesn't engage with any of that, and he goes on and on and on about how one of the Democratic senators who voted to restrict healthcare in this way, Elena Parent, was in a screaming argument with a constituent with a 9-year-old transgender child, right? And he doesn't engage at all. He has plenty to say about how Gavin Newsom is against trans women and girls competing in female sports, of course. He has plenty to say about Elena Parent saying, if your party can get no public support, it will always lose. And I'd like to see Democrats win so we can stop all these bills that bully transgender people. What the fuck do you think you're doing now? Right? Like, if you don't
They're
make
winning. They're winning bigly.
if you don't make a stand on what healthcare is and is not, how can you be expected to fight for any other aspect of my rights? How can you expect to fight? How can you be trusted to fight for any aspect of anybody else's rights if you fold on what is objectively, clinically, like the data is out there? You know, like any other form of healthcare, like this significantly improves psychological profile, improves your physical health. Like you are literally coming up with an excuse to treat certain groups of people as second class, and you want to pretend that there's some kind of electoral arithmetic to this. Fuck off, Bill Torpy. You know what? Like I know fascism is a specific term, but like you're no better than any of them, right?
Well, you know, we don't want to be on the outside looking in, Lenore. Well, we would hate to feel like that. We would hate. Bill Torpy's been at the AJC since 1990, so he's on the inside looking in, presumably.
It's stressful for he quotes a podcaster, Ron Roberts. I don't know who the fuck he is. It's stressful for progressives, Ron says, like myself, that we want ideological purity tests that no one can meet. What, like being able to access your hormone therapy if you're a prisoner? That's a
Oh,
horrible
so
purity
yeah, that's
test, man.
that. So I guess I wanted to like, I just there is no like understanding of material conditions from these people ever about anything. They never they're trying to hack language to get the perfect whatever, and sacrifice anything to get their perfect 50 plus 1% of the margins of society. It is so it's not understanding that like the actually engaging with the real problems in society, the real issues people face, the real shortages people have. That's the shit that's gonna break this thing. It's not It's not any of this other stuff. It's fucking. I don't know if Joe Biden hadn't been deporting so many fucking people, then maybe he would have like a bigger support in the immigrant community, whether or not the term was Latino or Latinx or Latina, right? You know what I mean? Like this stuff is they're trying to they're trying to solve it from the outside. They're trying to nominally blame the left, but because the left doesn't really have any power beyond in some cultural spaces, they've just got to like pull out this cultural shit. But like I don't know. I find it to be absolutely exhausting. And like, yes, have I encountered annoying people who can be like scoldy about language? Sure. They're a hell of a lot less annoying than the people that use
Sure,
my
but they're
money to
also the
mass
most
murder people.
powerless people in the world, you
Right.
know?
Yes. Like they're acting like 15-year-olds on Tumblr, like can fucking have the nuclear codes. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Yeah. If one day our government is controlled by like Tumblr otherkin, then we can talk. But guess what? Based on my understanding of their politics, they at least wouldn't be mass murdering people overseas. So,
Mm,
let's give it a shot. Give the woke children a shot. Why not? Give the
no,
TikTok kids
literally.
power. Why the fuck
I
not?
will I will go I'll go through Blue Sky and like I will pick the first 100 puppy girls I see to sit in the Senate over anybody sitting there right now.
That's actually what they did in Athenian democracy. You know, by lottery, they would pick the people that would sit on their senate, and I think that's what we'll do, but just among puppy girls and among the pronounced masses.
The
Um,
pronounced masses. Oh my
that
god.
might have to be the episode title, the pronounced masses.
See, that's
Um,
the thing. Like these liberals don't even try because like that fucking goes hard. That goes
mm,
crazy. Why are we better at making fun of ourselves than they are?
mm. Anyway, that's that article. I thought I would laugh more at it, but I'm just mad. Do you have anything better, Lenore?
More like Bill Torper.
More like um
The name of his column, Torpy at Large, sounds like a headline, right? Like he's out like committing crimes, and this is a fucking crime against rhetoric.
torpy
To be
to
clear,
torpy someone sounds like a minor like misdemeanor that like is a social faux pas that's barely a crime. Um More like ill torpy. I don't
oh
know.
yeah, he got me too'd for torpedoing somebody.
To be clear, not libel. We don't have I have no evidence that Bill torpeed me at the Mall of Georgia last week.
He torpedoed both of us this morning.
God. It's time for your torpedoing session.
Yes, honey.
There's nothing actionable about that because it doesn't actually mean anything. It just sounds bad. The point, listeners, is that it's a bad name. Do better. Lenore, what do you have for us today?
So yeah, yes. As initially, I had picked precisely that article, but of course, but yeah, no. So like, I've been crashing out all week already, so I was kind of on the fence about doing the whole Torpy thing myself. I'm glad you brought it up because there's definitely a lot to say about that jabroni. But,
We
but,
torpedoed him.
facts. But the one I picked today is called Renaming Cabinet Department from Defense to War Rejects Peace, True Power. And the subhead, this change will teach our children that violence defines American destiny and that peace belongs only to dreamers. I didn't know violence defined American destiny, Jacob, until just last week when Trump made that change. Did you?
More like the Department of Bore because this article sucks.
Got him. The author, of course, Bryce Thomason, who is what is he? What is he? The executive director of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta, a faith community with deep roots in Atlanta's civil rights movement, a longtime advocate for social justice. Views expressed are his right. He begins. I want to note, by the way, the image at the top of this article is Trump and Pete Hegseth in the White House, and Hegseth looks like he's describing a fish that he just caught. You know, he kind of talks with his
His
hands.
fish was this big.
Which, I mean, I'm sorry, Pete, not an impressive fish. I caught a bigger fish than that when I was 6 years old. The news that President Donald Trump has signed an executive order renaming the Department of Defense back to the Department of War shakes me deeply. This is not just a bureaucratic shuffle. Words matter. Titles matter. The language we use tells the next generation who we are and what we believe. And I happen to agree with that sentiment, Jacob. Again, we just did an interview with Alec Karakatsanis. He talks a lot about the punishment bureaucracy, right? Our system of policing and prisons. He talks about human caging because that's what it is. There is value in calling something what it is. So when someone tells me, Jacob, that the language we use tells the next generation who we are and what we believe, I expect him to come out like Nathan J. Robinson in Current Affairs and say, yeah, renaming it to the Department of War tells us exactly what the United States is doing, right?
Mm.
But he goes on. When Harry Truman and Congress chose defense in 1949, they were not fussing with semantics. They signaled a turn away from constant war making. They recognized that America's strength must be measured not only by military might, but also by a commitment to stability and peace. That mattered then, and it matters now.
Okay, I just gotta interject here. Aside from like us going into like what America does and what America is, you know why the Department of Defense like became a thing in 1948, right? Like
Not specifically.
the Department of War was the Army. We had the Department of the Navy. We had the Department of the Air Force. These were separate departments. Part of this was just combining them into one department for efficiency's sake because we had different heads and the cabinet was getting bloated. Like we had a Navy guy, we had an Air, like they were all in the cabinet and they wanted to make this more efficient under a single department. It wasn't just Truman and the boys were like, damn, war sounds mean. No, like it was them combining multiple departments together and they decided on the name defense. That's something that like I feel like's been lost. And I will say what I do support is if Trump wants to call it Department of War, I think we should re-separate all those departments and we should have an individual guy for every element of the defense/war infrastructure. So we should have a Navy guy, we should have an Air Force guy, we should have a Space Force guy. They should all be on the cabinet. They should all have to follow Pete Hegseth wherever he goes at all times. I think that would be great. But I feel like that's
They
the
should
thing
all
that's
have to go
overlooked.
through a door at the same time.
Yes, 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 very much. It's like a sort of Three Stooges type beat, but like seven of them.
Except it'd be like, yeah, the Seven Stooges.
The
Oh my god!
seven, yeah, the Seven Stooges. That's the American SS.
Isn't there
Um,
isn't there something about that in Revelation?
something like that. Just behold, I saw Curly and Larry and Moe
And
pouring
Shemp.
out pouring out wrath upon the nations, and lo, Mo looked over the people of the world and said, "Yuck, yuck, yuck." No, but I just had to make the point that like I feel like people are missing like it wasn't the Department of War and got renamed the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense was a new institution created in 1948, which is something that I
Mhm.
also don't think Donald Trump knows because he's talking about renaming it as well. But whatever. So nobody
Yeah,
knows anything because no one's ever read a book except the two of us and those of you listening to this podcast by proxy of listening to us talking about books.
yeah, no, like that is an important like nuance that nevertheless does get lost in the. See, that's the thing. Like Jacob, you're absolutely right. Like by reframing it to just be about rhetoric, like you do genuinely lose something in the you do genuinely lose something um in your analysis, right? Like you have to consider the material forces that go into the balancing act that drives, okay, we create this new institution out of these, like, it is valuable to understand. um to go on though, so when I hear Trump say that under the Department of War we won the World War I, World War II, and that everybody likes that, I feel a knot in my stomach. I will say, like, I do think we lose something by not being allowed to laugh at Trump when he's being funny. Like, we won World War I, World War II. Everybody likes that. That's
Well,
I,
he also said we won the World War One, which is really good.
I, yeah. That's he's cooking there. I'm sorry.
And everybody likes that.
Everybody likes when we win world wars.
Except did you if I don't know if you listen to Tucker Carlson's podcast, you shouldn't, but he did say a few weeks ago he did float that maybe we were on the wrong side in World War II a few weeks ago on his podcast. So maybe not everybody likes that.
Well, I mean, just don't look up where Germany got half of its steel before the war broke out.
Mm.
Uh, it reduces our history to battles won, as if war is the highest expression of who we are. That is not the America I want to hand to our children. What troubles me most is the pattern underneath those words. When a leader romanticizes war, they court the war they want to fight. Not sure what to make of that construction there. A president who
George
aggrandizes
R. R.
war.
Martin asked dialogue from a guy that's about to get decapitated. That's a guy in Game of Thrones in like episode 2 that you think is going to be an important character that just gets fucking crossbow through the neck. Like,
Varys comes up and he's like, Sir Thomason, might I advise an alternate course of action?
his
A
ass is
president
not making it to season 2.
A president who aggrandizes war to feel powerful will always find a reason to wage one. Which, like, I feel like there's more presidents that have waged more wars for reasons other than feeling powerful.
I mean, it intersects because I never want to be the Marxist that's like believes in material conditions so much that I don't acknowledge that like individual freaks do like turn the tides of history, like because they
Undoubtedly.
do. And Marx would say the same. Marx was one such weird little freak that turned the tide of history, complimentary. But like, it isn't just because a guy feels a type of way that like a war happens typically, right?
Hmm.
Like even like think about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, maybe he killed Soleimani because he was like feeling insecure on the day, but also like he was presented those options by an infrastructure that has been set up and exists prior to him. There were forces inside that infrastructure that had their own beliefs about how things should work. There are dueling forces in there. There is a capacity to do things. Things don't get conjured. Donald Trump is not a sorcerer who can conjure up an army to fight a war. That's just when Donald Trump orders a drone strike on a Venezuelan fishing boat, which he admitted yesterday very likely was a fishing boat himself and said it didn't matter.
Well,
Um,
and now we can ask which one,
yes.
because he fucking did it again.
Yes. Um, when he does that, was it maybe an individual whim? Yeah, sort of, but it is also part of a longer string of policy. So I also I get a little nervous when people start talking about, like the individual, like, small dick syndrome of whatever president.
Oh
It's like,
yeah, I mean
yeah,
it's the
maybe, but
same
also.
it's the same nonsense that people pathologize, like, Putin and like the running of Russia with, right? And it leads to this idea of, okay, well, if it is all down to an individual madman directing the entire state apparatus, then nothing is off the table to stop him, right?
Right. And we must all be madmen who are under his thumb somehow because of like magic, right? Like that's not how it
Hmm.
works. That said, is it true that the capriciousness of individuals can cause things? Yeah, but like I don't think Lyndon B. Johnson
Hmm.
had his own decisions for what he did versus John F. Kennedy had decisions for what he did versus George W. Bush. People have different individual motivations, but guess what? They continue to serve the project regardless.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I keep cutting you off. Go ahead.
No, 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 no. That's the structure we got here.
Let's hear the wisdom. Let's get some more wisdom. Win me over.
There's more of just capital W wisdom here. When power is defined as domination, an excuse will always be found to justify its use. Um,
Sure.
Homer already did this, dude. The blade itself incites the deeds of violence. History teaches us this lesson repeatedly. Schoolyard bullies grow into political bullies, and the stakes move from bruised egos to human lives. Uh,
100%.
whatever, right? Um, from Marshall to Carter, peace happens through diplomacy. The administration refers to the change as a warrior ethos. I call it a dangerous illusion. If you hang a sign over the Pentagon that says war, you tell the people inside to prepare for war. You shape policy, direct budgets, and steer direct decisions toward conflict. Oh, wow. The Pentagon wasn't doing that before, Jacob.
I'm thinking neon lights. War.
They should do that. They if Trump puts something in the next budget bill that puts a big like neon war sign above the Pentagon, like of course I'm not going to support him, but I'm gonna I'll throw him a bone.
I think that
That
would
would be
be.
funny.
I think that would be worth one shelf point.
One
Unfortunately,
shelf points.
Trump is already down 1 trillion shelf points, so I'm not worried about him getting into the positive. But
Hmm.
I would give him one shelf point for that. Okay. Don't ask what happens when you get to negative 10 trillion shelf points. Okay. Yeah, I
I
would.
force fem you.
Yes, that's when you get 10 trillion. That's not negative 10 trillion. That's the positive.
No, no,
Depending
no.
on
I
the
get 10. I get 10 trillion. I take 10 trillion shelf points from you when I force fem you.
Oh, okay. So it's good. So that's I was gonna say that seems like a win for at least
Hmm.
for a lot of you with listeners, probably. I mean, I'm not judging, but my guess
Hmm.
is about the type of people who listen to our show.
Let's see. Our
Donald Trump
nation's
could forced feminization have saved her? Donald
is
Trump.
is that the episode title? Donald Trump force fem.
I really think pronoun masses is really good too, but we'll see.
Okay, okay, okay. But we'll keep that in.
We'll keep it in.
Just listeners, so you know where our heads are at. Our nation's history is replete with great peacemakers and visionaries who understood that true power stems from restraint, diplomacy, and justice. President Dwight Eisenhower warned against the military industrial complex even as he carried the weight of World War II on his shoulders. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that Bryce Thomason has never been to Guatemala.
I mean, I hope not. I will say Dwight Eisenhower's last speech is one of the funniest things ever. His last address to Congress, because he's like, "Yo, be careful about all this war stuff that I've been doing. It's really annoying."
I'll have to listen to it all the way through one of these
It's
days.
big, like we're trying to find the guy who did this. Like, if you hear the speech out of context, it's a pretty good speech. Like, it's correct. It's just so happens that it's his fault. Well, partially at least.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, we're
Yeah, Dwight
all trying to
Eisenhower,
find the guy who just empowered fucking MacArthur to prepare to nuke the border of Korea and China.
yeah, Dwight Eisenhower, Jacobo Arbenz, like that whole overthrow. Like we don't need to get into it here. Listen to our Myth of American Idealism episode for more on that.
Mm.
Read the book too. Um, Former Secretary of State and of Defense George Marshall looked at a broken Europe and offered the Marshall Plan, not domination, but rebuilding through investment and cooperation. It was domination, by the way, economically, but
If Pete Hegseth had named it, it would have been the Marshall Plan. Martia.
oh shit,
The Marshall Plan. That's the
it
only
is the
difference. It
Marshall.
would have been the same thing in every other way. Just like evil lightning around it.
We need more evil lightning. Decades
And
later,
signs that say
Georgia's native
war.
son, President Jimmy Carter, gathered adversaries at Camp David and showed that patient diplomacy could accomplish what armies never would. Not that he didn't try in Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, those. I mean,
or,
they armies accomplished plenty in Afghanistan. He was quite
Mhm.
successful, and it never came back to bite us. I One of these days it's going to become socially acceptable for me to share my opinions about Jimmy Carter.
And that day is, I mean, come on, come
No,
on.
exactly.
What are we doing here if it's not?
No, I'm teasing. No, Jimmy Carter. I mean, yeah, if you want to rank American presidents, he's better than a lot of them. But like, the Taliban didn't come from nowhere, folks.
Hmm. Hmm. Wasn't he involved in East Timor as well?
I'm gonna have to give a I don't know to that, but I sure do know he helped set up things so that credit card companies could run the way they certainly do. I sure do know that he weakened shit for unions. I sure do know that he presided over the wrapping up, as they called it, in Indonesia. And so and we could go on. So it's nice, I guess, that he built houses after he became president. Maybe he was like trying to offset his karmic debt, but
Yeah, we call
whatever.
that buying indulgences, folks. Um, their examples remind us that peace, when chosen with courage, can hold the world steady for decades. To replace them with leaders who romanticize war, who treat it as a personal stage for swagger and profit, is to invite disaster. Real strength lies not in saber rattling or spectacle, but in the quiet, often unseen work of diplomacy and restraint. That steady labor prevents violence before it explodes. We once trusted statesmen and women who knew that nonviolence is not weakness, but power under discipline.
I'm
That
so
vision of
serious. Which does he cite like a single example of one of these statesmen or women?
I'm so glad you asked, Jacob.
Oh God.
Uh, that vision of power deserves our honor today. John Lewis, MLK, and Young taught us about nonviolence.
Okay, I guess I'll give it for them. Sure.
Atlanta knows that vision well. This city taught the world what courage looks like, marching unarmed into the teeth of hatred. John Lewis, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Andrew Young, and so many Atlantans proved that nonviolence can move empires. If we forget that legacy, we forget ourselves. Georgians, including military families, deserve leaders who recognize that the words we choose shape the world we create and keep the sons and daughters who choose military service safe. Renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War will not make us safer. It will not make us stronger. It will make us smaller. That's not the word I expected him to use, but okay. It'll teach our children that violence defines our destiny and that peace belongs only to dreamers. That is not a story I will ever tell about my country, and it is a future we must refuse. This is not semantics. It is a dangerous rewriting of our national story. And a leader who chooses war over peace in name reveals the war he intends to pursue in practice. I'll cap this article off with a phrase that we all remember. Say it with me. We came, we saw, he died.
I like that if we name it the Department of War, we all get smaller. I'm like to imagine if we more departments we rename, the teenier and tinier we get. So we get just the teensiest little Trump. He's 2 inches high. He's a 2 inch high little 2 inch high little Trump, and he's like, JD, don't step on me. I don't know. Is this anything?
It it would be funny if like all of Trump shrank except for his hands.
So then that they would be the same size as his body. Yes. Um, Here's what I'm going to say about the nonviolence thing. Yes, of course, nonviolence as a civil rights movement tactic, incredibly effective in certain situations, as we have seen in Atlanta, 100%. We should learn from that.
But also, he was just talking about foreign policy.
Right.
Like,
but no country has ever succeeded like by those. You can't do a sit-in as a country. Like, MLK, and John Lewis and those folks were making decisions, tactical decisions based on their situation, right? But like, if fucking, let's bring it back. You talked about Eisenhower, so let's bring up Korea, right? Like, what were the Koreans supposed to do, a mass sit-in while they got napalmed? Like, what are you talking about, right? Like, that's not how this works. And it's also like not how US foreign policy works. US foreign policy, yes, we've done diplomacy that's not been explicitly violent diplomacy, but talk about the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan was, one, came with the threat of violence. Two, it was designed to set up a violent relationship, or at least the implication of a violent relationship between Western and Eastern Europe. And it had different ends, right? When you're investing in a country and then you own a section of it, that is a different type of violence. So this discussion of like, oh, we need to learn the lessons of nonviolence. Like, I agree, but the idea of calling it war or defense is not what's going to do that. It's whether or not you are invading, marauding, destroying, overthrowing foreign countries. And as far as I can remember, there's been presidents who've been better and there's been presidents who's been worse, but we don't have a president for the last ever that would fit the shoes of, nonviolent. Martin Luther King Jr. did not become president. He did not become a sitting politician, like, so to be like, in citing Jimmy Carter, we already said, like, yes, I appreciate that Jimmy Carter did not start any grand wars, but he did plenty of stuff. His administration carried out plenty of bad stuff. The American empire is an inherently violent thing. That's why, like, look, I'm never going to call it the Gulf of America. I'm never going to call Denali Mount McKinley, but I will to call it the Department of War because that's more fucking accurate, actually. I'm kind of cooked with that one. Because it is the Department of War. And why shouldn't we call it the Department of War? And like, people want to get mad over language. It makes me think of Donald Trump the other day posted a AI image of himself as the captain from Apocalypse Now, napalming the city of Chicago. And it said Chipocalypse Now because I guess he couldn't think of Chicagolypse Now. And we immediately had, a strong response from sitting U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth saying, "You dodged the draft. How dare you post a picture of you in a military uniform?" And that feels to be the energy that we're dealing with here. Like, it is the energy of like, how dare you do this aesthetic thing versus
yes.
the more overwhelming problem of Hey, do you see the picture where he napalmed Chicago? Or Department of War, Department of Defense. Either way, they're just blowing up random Venezuelans.
Hmm.
No, or they're just whatever you call the department. They are shipping American-made weapons to Israel, to Saudi Arabia, to fucking whatever horrible foreign force, that we're gonna find out in 30 years is gonna be, the current Operation Cyclone. You know, the I'm sure we've got a million and one things operating. Like goddamn, like that's the problem, not the fucking language. And I mean, like, I agree. Theoretically, in a future socialist United States or whatever, would I want the military to have better language around it than calling it Department of War, war fighters? Yeah, like that's a good thing to do. I think that's generally good. But the idea of when we're dealing with the framework of the United States government, and then we're bringing up people like MLK that the United States government murdered, and then we're trying to talk about it in like terms of violence or nonviolence. It's like we are losing the plot in a significant way. And I don't want to be like disrespectful to this writer in particular, because it seems like he's got at least a good vision for what the world should look like. But this is both an article brain problem of people thinking about words and semantics this way, and it is a liberal problem of not understanding the actual fundamental problems that like we face as a society. Holy fuck.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. Like, I mean, we've mentioned it on the show before, but of course, Brown University's Cost of War project, right? Post 9/11 wars that the US has prosecuted have directly killed over 900,000 people, indirectly 3.6 million to 3.8 million more. Um, and 38 million, as many as 38 million have been displaced. Like, that's World War II numbers. And that's before you get to Trump 2. That is before you get to the ongoing phase of genocide in Gaza, right? Like, regardless of party affiliation, right? Regardless of the language that is used to prosecute this stuff. And by the way, you don't even have to go to recent history, right, to understand, how these things have been whitewashed and talked about in the most crude terms alternately, right? We all remember the hideous racism that fueled the invasion of Iraq, right, and whipping up the support for that, right? We all remember how, we just talked about it in the propaganda episode the other day, how the most hideous human brutality that is a successor to chattel slavery and Jim Crow persists to this day under words like, systems of care and community policing. When you get into the weeds about how these things are talked about and described, certainly, like, rhetorically, yeah, there's some value in using this word or that word, but when you lose sight of the material impact of these policies, right, you are already losing.
Well, did you know that George W. Bush's administration called certain of their efforts, they had a whole section of their efforts in Iraq called Operation Blessing, which was, nominally, yes, they provided some like hot meals to kids that whose homes they'd exploded, but like also they were using it to like do intelligence work and shit. Like Operation Blessing sounds nice. In fact, there is an actual like relief organization called Operation Blessing as well. I'm sure they didn't appreciate their name being conflated with the U.S. military. I don't know much about them, so I'm not like libeling them. I'm just saying that this is a thing that they called an Iraq operation, right? They've
I am
called,
hearing this now for the first time.
or like, remember Operation Iraqi Freedom? That was another one.
Hmm.
That sounds great, right? Don't we all love Iraqi freedom? Well, theoretically, you can call things cool sounding things or good sounding things. And we're actually going to be covering 1984 soon, and we have a lot of criticisms of that book, as you'll see. But like, I think it's a responsibility of anti-imperialists, of socialists, to not allow people to say war is peace and peace is war. And if our enemies want to do that work for us of getting rid of the obfuscation, and then we can just fight the forces of war without having to argue whether war is peace, then I would appreciate that, actually. So you know what? The more Pete Hegseth does his thing where he's like, we're the Department of War, he gets a tattoo on his arm that says infidel in Arabic, which, like, dumbass, that's what an Arab Christian would also call you for not believing in God. Like, so that's not a real, like, he thought that he was owning Muslims by doing that. Fucking moron. Same guy who said, "I'll never bow to Allah. I only bow to Jesus." It's like, well, what do you think Christians call God in Arabic? Whatever. Same guy also says he doesn't wash his hands. But God, I fucking hate Pete Hegseth. We should do a tier list sometime. People have asked if we would do live stream at some point. And I think it would be fun to like live stream like a tier list of the Trump administration or something like that. Like,
Oh, please. I would love that.
I think that would be a big blast. We got some like friends of the pod together to do some like riffing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know who's going to be worse than like fucking Stephen Miller, but anyway, I'm like fucking. I feel like I'm at like 40% capacity today, y'all. So I'm gonna probably wrap up my thoughts there. But like, God, what two back to back articles that are very frustrating from a very liberal perspective. That is obnoxious, like a nominally liberal perspective. I would say the second one a more sincere liberal perspective than the Torpy one, but like,
Oh, for sure.
But both of them, like, you're just missing the plot.
Well, and in very similar ways, right? Because they both revolve around language, right? And who should be able to determine the language that we use, and for what purpose, and what values that language connotes. And it is so interesting to me that between the common ground between these articles is that the question of who determines language never involves regular people, right? And it never involves, not only regular people, but like experts, right? I'm thinking of birthing persons right now, people in the medical field who have consulted with marginalized patients, and determine these things. And these things are still evolving, I'm not going to pretend the medical field has been perfect and or even particularly good to marginalized people, not in this fucking country, Jesus. But like, there is actual theoretical grounding and evolution and conversations driving the one, and just a rhetorical flourish driving the other. And it's the rhetorical flourish that these people want to engage with, and they just lose sight of what real people are talking about.
Fuck yeah, they do. Well, folks, it has been a lot's been going on. We're both busy folks, but we're doing our best. We're going to keep on trying to do our best with this show. We appreciate y'all sticking with us. Always appreciate the feedback we get. Just wanted to throw that out there again. Always feel free to reach out. We love to hear from y'all. Also, just wanted to throw out that we've got some like cool stuff that we've been up to that I would love for people to go check out. As of today, Jesse Hawken, Junk Filter Pod. We both went on to talk about 28 Years Later. That just dropped as of a few hours ago at this recording. Definitely recommend people go and listen to that. Both of us recently have gone on All My Maidens with Aisha Ufara to talk about Elden Ring. Super fun. That's 3 episodes now that the two of us have been on cumulatively. Pretty soon I'm going to be going on Fruitless to talk about the phenomenon of Captain America, from originally being a pro-American but somewhat anti-fascist icon to a more fascistic thing as time has gone on, and also how different authors have used him to critique the United States in positive ways, and also how and maybe I'll just share the story of how I first came out as a queer after watching Chris Evans shirtless in a movie and wanting to do things.
Many such cases.
And him being Captain America notwithstanding. And we've definitely got some other stuff coming up too. So I will be sharing that as. I mean, we've done some cool stuff. I did some things with how the Red was won not too long ago. You went on Worst of All Possible Worlds. It's been like a month now, but still, go back and check that out. All kinds of cool collabs coming up in the near future as well. And also, if you're listening to this and you have a pod, I don't care if you've got 10 listeners, reach out to us. Like, well, we'd love to vibe. Unless you're Bill Torpy, I'm not feeling it. I've already met Bill Torpy once. I don't want to do it again.
Have you really?
Yeah, he torpedoed me this morning. No, I actually did meet him once at an Atlanta City Council meeting. He was perfectly nice. He didn't whatever.
I mean, these people always are.
Yeah, he was just writing his fucking article. Yeah. Well, Lenore, do you have any other thoughts before we sign off this one?
To all our birthing people, stay tuned.
As we give birth to more and more and more podcasts every week. Honestly, I think it's kind of... I'm not going to say that. Never mind. See y'all.
Peace out. A leader who chooses chooses war over peace in name, reveals the war he intends to pursue in practice. I will just cap off the article here with a phrase we all know. Say it with me. He came. Sorry.
Just cutting that. He came.
I'll cap this article off with it.
Thank you for listening to Socialist Shelf Radio.